Now, over the past 6 months or so, no pun intended, I've been pondering what video game challenge I should do. Should I 100% Hollow Knight? Should I 100% Cuphead? Should I 100% Alien Isolation? But none of these games struck a chord within me. When I was scrolling through my plethora of games, I landed on Little Nightmares 2, my current favorite game of all time. And when I looked over at the achievements list, I had already 100%ed the game. But then I remembered a game challenge that I put off so many times. Beating Little Nightmares without dying once. Now, this might sound simple, just make a few quick run and jumps and you've beaten the game, right? Well, no. Unlike many other games where you have about 4 to 5 hits until you die, Little Nightmares took the approach of if you fall down from a high enough place, get grabbed, or just straight up eaten whole, you die instantly. Now, from a story and gameplay point of view, I think that this death style perfectly fits this game's atmosphere, showing just how small and fragile these children really are. But from a challenge point of view, you could probably imagine just how ridiculously challenging it can be to just not die. You could be playing perfectly without making any mistakes, and then the next thing you know, you die by missing one simple jump that you have literally never messed up before. And when it takes about an hour to make it back to the same point again, it's super defeating. However, when looking at the achievements list not completed and knowing that my favorite franchise wasn't 100%ed, I knew I had to complete this challenge and claim my victory. And this is how I completed the toughest Little Nightmares challenge. The very first segment of this game is simply called The Prison, and our good pal Six here is the character I'll be playing as for the entire run. Now, Six has a lighter, just a lighter, and I guess she also has her infamous yellow raincoat. And yes, I used infamous correctly, alright, if you know you know. But anyways, for the very first section of the game, it's nothing crazy. It's mainly just a tutorial for the game to show you the ropes. And although there are a few sections I could die at, with a couple of well-timed jumps, it's not too difficult. And that's a good thing, especially considering I'm definitely going to be back here more than once. Starting off, the first couple of rooms that we run through aren't super difficult. It's just a lot of walking and climbing. But making it to a certain point of the chapter leads us to my first real possible chance of dying. The leeches. Now, dying here might not seem super difficult, but you would be surprised. Just grazing the leeches instantly sends us back to the beginning of the game. So we quickly run and jump past most of the leeches, hoping not to get killed. Making it past the leeches takes us to another possible thing to kill us, the eyelight room. Now, once again, you might think dying here would be practically impossible, but it is definitely possible to die. I mean, just grazing the light almost sends us into cardiac arrest. So we opt for the slower strategy and take our time going through this section. Once we make it past the eye light, we are led into a room with a lot of beds and a lot of children sleeping in them. And also our first encounter with Roger the janitor, who will become more important in the second chapter. Once he makes his exit, we make ours. And after a couple more simple enough rooms and another eye light room, we cross this bridge to take us onto the next chapter. Okay, that wasn't too bad, but the chance of us dying will only increase when we make it further in this game, especially when it comes to the second chapter. Chapter 2 is the layer where this game's difficulty really starts to ramp up. Tons of high places to fall down from, plenty of traps, and our boy Roger is back. Yeah, this is going to be a fun time. But at least the start of the chapter isn't too difficult. The only spot I could die at is if I were to fall down off below this staircase. Luckily we don't, and we climb up the 5 flights of stairs, leading us into our last room before total danger comes our way, which is actually Roger's room. Would you look at that? It's a surprisingly normalish room. Well, except for the freakishly large, tall cabinets, but whatever. Making it past Roger's room, we are caught in an obvious trap and brought to a room with many cages, including our own. Breaking out of the cage, we find Roger tying up some very suspicious bags. Minding our own business, we run at Mach 5 past Roger and drop down this hole, bringing us right back to the area where we first were captured at. Now all we have to do is just run back to the elevator, and we're good.
Why are you running? Yeah?
Okay, well, that changes things. With our butt officially clenched, we run as fast as we can back to the elevator. Once inside, we do the cheeky corner strat to save some time. Making it off the elevator, we crawl through this dingy crawl space and quickly climb up the shelf on the other side, to then make it to yet another room filled with all sorts of clocks of different shapes and sizes. Luckily for us, when we are in the room with Roger, the clocks begin to chime, leaving Roger stunned and giving me the chance to run into the room at the end of the hall. Once inside the room, we quickly observe and begin to climb the wall of books. Once at the top, Roger drops down from above and then walks into the room ahead of him. We stay a safe distance away from him and follow. Once inside, we hastily climb the small book stack onto the shelf and run across the shelves and hop into the room in the very back. Inside the room, we find a crank that we need to use, so we push the button on the TV and alert Roger to the room we are in before slipping past him and using the crank to make it to the vent on the other side of the book room. Making it into the vent, we see Roger's arms poke through two conveniently shaped holes in the wall. But with quick timing, we scurry past him and fall down out of the vent and begin to instantly run as Roger bursts through the door. Running all the way down, we slide underneath a closing door with a cage placed underneath it. We climb up the cage in the back side of the room to wait for the perfect chance to pull off one of the bars on the cage holding up the door. We go in and successfully pull off one of the bars. Then we climb back up the cage in the back and rinse and repeat. Once the opportunity arises, we hastily run down and pull off the other bar, successfully closing the door and chopping Roger's arms off in the process. Sorry, not sorry. And with that, Chapter 2 is complete. And now we move on to the hardest chapter in the game, in my opinion. Chapter 3 is titled The Kitchen, and as soon as we start the chapter, we're off to a great start by eating a rat caught in a trap. Nice. Continuing on, we find a cart filled with bags of something, I don't know, and we use it to climb on this windowsill to jump down into the kitchen area. Not more than 20 seconds later, we see one of the two chefs chopping up some meat on the table. So, while he looks the other way, I sneak past him as quickly as I can before heading into the larger kitchen area filled with many stoves and pots and pans. Chef McFadderson follows us into the kitchen, so I find a suitable table to crawl under and hide. While in the kitchen, Chef 1 starts to tinker with some things around the kitchen, and while he does his thing, we do ours, which is to escape. So we stealthily crawl all the way to the back of the room and climb up the shelf in the back. Making it up top, we jump onto the ceiling braces and walk very carefully to this wall with cages that have fish carcasses in them. Making it past the fish cages leads us to Fatty McFadderson number 2, who is sleeping in a bed. In the room, we see a key that we can definitely use, so we climb the shelf in the back of the room, effectively waking Chef number 2 somehow. Once he leaves, we drop down and grab the key hanging above, before heading out of the room. Grabbing the key, we head out of the room and take the elevator below to the kitchen area once more. With the key in hand, we have to take it to the door in the very back of the kitchen, right next to the shelf we climbed earlier. So, with some careful maneuvering, we slip past Chef 1 and head into the next zone. The next area requires us to pull some meat from the freezer up above and drop it into this meat grinder, which made sausage links for us to swing into the vent in the wall. Going through the vent leads us to an even bigger freezer area with all sorts of meat and other things around. Walking over to the elevator just outside of the freezer and pulling the lever brings down Chef number 2, who was suspiciously standing in the elevator. So we quickly run and hide underneath this box before taking the elevator back up whilst Chef 2 is distracted. When we make it up a floor, we run straight for the vent in the wall and wait for Chef 2 to go into the next room. Once Chef 2 is in the next room over, we follow him through and sneak past him before climbing into a room with a meat saw thingamajig and turn it on to distract Chef Boyardee. With him distracted, we climb onto this table and grab the key lying there before we head down the elevator again, and use the key to unlock the door, which leads us almost right into the second to last area of the chapter. But before that, I have to fall down this hole and pray that I don't die, because I've definitely died falling down here before, and that was quite possibly the dumbest death to get in this game. Anyways, we don't, and we successfully make it to the second to last part of the chapter, the cleaning area. Now, as you can clearly see, Chef 1 and 2 are both here cleaning dishes. Aw, would you look at that? Anyways, this section isn't too difficult in practice, however, executing it is much harder than it seems, because for whatever reason, both the chefs have the sight of an eagle and can spot you super easily if you're not careful. So we wait for a couple of minutes until both of the chefs are in a perfect position, then we make our move. Okay, we made it to the designated room. Now all we have to do is push this lever in the opposite direction, wait a few seconds, and slowly crawl our way back to the center dish pile stacked high. Mission successful. But it's not over yet. Now I have to grab onto this moving hook and ride it all the way to this room, where I drop down and run as fast as I can, slip underneath this table, and climb onto this dish box before grabbing onto the hook and making our escape. Which, in turn, completes the third chapter of the game. And now we move on to the fourth chapter. Chapter 4 is named The Guests, and right as soon as we walk across this big pipe and climb up this ladder, we are popped out of the boat-like thing, and we see these big guys, appropriately named the Guests. Not wasting another moment, we grab this chain and climb up the side of the massive boat thing named the Maw, before climbing through the hole back inside the Maw. Once inside, we get to see a little bit more of the Guests from a safe distance. Crawling through this hole, we drop down, pull this plank off, crawl through yet another hole, and whoa! Okay, I think we might be getting a little too close for comfort here. Let's just continue onward, and okay, really? Whatever. If we just stay really quiet and climb up this wall, we should be safe. Okay, nice. What's up, by the way? Anyways, we crawl through and jump across these hanging lights above the Guests before squeezing through these not-so-sliding doors and get our first way too close and personal encounter with the Guests. As we squeeze through some more sliding doors, we accidentally knock over some bottles, triggering this fatso into chasing me. Luckily for me, 6 is pretty freaking fast, so as long as I don't stop moving, I should be good. Oh my god! Okay, that was definitely way too close for comfort. Moving on, we climb on top of this table and climb the plates stacked high to then grab onto this hanging light and swing our way into the next room, and oh god, this room. Yeah, let's just say every time I go through this room, my butt is clenched to the absolute maximum. You'll see. Yeah, so there's that. If your butt wasn't clenched watching that, I would genuinely be surprised. Moving on, we climb up this wall and jump into this room before squeezing through this railing and immediately begin to run for, you guessed it, another butt-clenching run sequence. Running down, we jump and grab onto this lamp, which sends us flying down into the room filled to the brim with Guests. Running down the room a ways sends this big boy flying off his seat as he heads straight for me like a COD zombie. So we run straight back to where we started and use the table to jump on his back and run for our lives. Making it through the hole in the wall, we barely escape and jump down to immediately run again because Chef 1 conveniently comes down the elevator. So we run into the bathroom at the end of the hall and hide in this box lying on the ground. Chef 1, completely dumbfounded, leaves the room. We then pick up a can off the ground and throw it at the mirror on the wall, effectively breaking it, which reveals a hidden room behind the mirror with a chair in it. Creepy. Wasting no more time, we climb through the broken mirror and make our way up the wall, which takes us to the pipes above. Now, since there isn't any lock on the pipe, we can most definitely fall off and break our neck. Luckily we don't, and we safely make it on the ground. Then we use the elevator that Chef 1 used and take it down to the last running section of the chapter. Using the prayer emoji hands, we take one deep breath and go for it. Nice, we made it. We're so close now, just a little more to go. Now, something I never really talked about in this video, which is a crucial part of this game, is Six's hunger moments, where out of seemingly nowhere, she gets these insane hunger pains, knocking her down to the ground. And the only thing she can eat is, well... So, yeah, being the absolute monster that we are, we venture forth to the 5th and final chapter of the game. Chapter 5, named The Ladies' Quarters, is the final chapter of the game, and although it is a short and simple chapter, there is still a small chance I could throw the run. This first part of the chapter is very simple. All I have to do is get a key and unlock the door at the bottom of the room to then enter the finale. So, we crawl past the lady entering this room to then push over a vase to reveal the key. And with said key in hand, we walk back to the door with the lock on it. Now, because the final area is so short, I will play the clip of me attempting to win the challenge. Enjoy. Okay, running section, ladies' quarters, end of the game. You can still die, like it's not free. It isn't free yet. Okay. I like to start running now. Okay, look forward. Get in there. Cool beans. Okay. Just calm, confident. I just gotta keep telling myself that, and I'll be okay. 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 So it goes left, right, top, bottom. Left, right, top, bottom. That's the order. Calm and confident. Okay, let's do it. This is it. I believe in myself and calm and confidence. We can do it. Right. Nope, left. Not right. There we go. Okay. There's that. First one done. Now we go to the right. That was way too close. Okay. Come on. I'm not gonna celebrate until I see that achievement. I'm not gonna celebrate until I see that achievement. Okay. Now, you might be wondering... You might be wondering, why am I not celebrating? Because I don't see the achievement. I have to see the achievement proc, and then I'll celebrate. Because this suffering is not over until I see that achievement. Please. 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 Please, please, please. I'm just praying that this works, dude. Please. Yeah! Let's go! Woo! As you can clearly hear from my excitement, I am so glad to have beaten this challenge. It took me numerous attempts and several hours to complete, but the pain and suffering are over. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that I answered the looming question: how hard is it to not die in Little Nightmares? Well, the answer is pretty darn difficult. But I hope that by watching this video, maybe you would like to try this challenge for yourself, or pick up the game and play it for the first time. Whatever it may be, I hope you have a fun time doing it. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.